In this episode, we move into a part of the Certified Information Systems Auditor, CISA, journey that feels very practical because it focuses on what happens after systems are built and placed into service. Many beginners first imagine cybersecurity and audit work as something mainly tied to projects, testing, and new technology decisions, but a huge amount of real risk lives in daily operations. Systems have to keep running, users have to keep working, data has to stay available and accurate, and the organization has to be ready when something goes wrong. That is why Domain 4 matters so much. It is concerned with the ongoing operation of information systems, the processes that keep those systems dependable, and the planning that helps a business continue through disruption. A helpful way to think about this domain is that earlier work may create the system, but operations and resilience determine whether the system can actually support the business day after day under normal pressure, unusual conditions, and outright crises. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Information systems operations is the broad set of activities that keep technology services functioning in a stable, controlled, and supportable way. This includes monitoring, job processing, incident handling, backups, system maintenance, user support, capacity management, and many of the routine but essential processes that most people only notice when they fail. For a beginner, it can be tempting to see operations as ordinary background work with less importance than major projects or advanced security tools. In reality, operations is where the business experiences technology most directly, because it is the part that determines whether payroll runs, orders process, applications respond, reports generate, and employees can complete their daily tasks. If operations are weak, even well-designed systems can become unreliable and frustrating. From an audit viewpoint, the main concern is whether these ongoing activities are controlled, repeatable, aligned with business needs, and supported by enough evidence that management can trust the environment rather than merely hope it will behave well. Business resilience adds another layer by focusing on the organization's ability to prepare for, respond to, and recover from disruption while continuing the most important parts of its mission. Disruption can come from many directions, including hardware failure, software defects, cyber attacks, power loss, human error, vendor problems, natural disasters, and simple process breakdowns. A resilient organization does not assume these events will never happen. Instead, it accepts that some form of interruption is likely over time and builds plans, controls, and capabilities that reduce harm when the unexpected arrives. Beginners sometimes confuse resilience with disaster response alone, but resilience is broader than reacting to a catastrophe. It includes planning, prioritization, redundancy, recovery, communication, and the ability to adapt operations during stress. In CISA thinking, resilience matters because a business is not judged only by how smoothly it functions on a normal day. It is also judged by whether it can protect essential operations, preserve data integrity, and restore critical services when conditions become difficult. One of the most important ideas in this domain is that operations and resilience are tightly connected rather than separate subjects. Strong daily operations reduce the likelihood that small issues will grow into major failures, and strong resilience planning helps the organization respond when good operations alone are not enough. For example, careful monitoring might catch a storage problem early, while a recovery plan helps if the storage failure still causes a serious outage. Routine backup checks support daily data protection, while broader continuity planning addresses how the business will keep serving customers if an entire site becomes unavailable. A beginner should recognize that resilience is not a replacement for good operations, and operations is not a substitute for resilience. They support one another. Auditors care about this relationship because weaknesses in everyday control often appear during major incidents, and weaknesses in recovery planning often remain hidden until operations are under stress. Looking at both together gives a more realistic view of whether the organization can truly support the business. A core theme in operations is consistency, because dependable service comes from repeatable processes rather than from constant improvisation. When jobs are scheduled properly, incidents are logged and escalated in a defined way. Access changes follow approved procedures, and monitoring is reviewed by responsible staff. The organization can deliver service with more confidence and less chaos. If those same activities depend on memory, informal messages, or a few individuals knowing secret workarounds, the environment becomes fragile even if it appears stable for a while. This is an important lesson for new learners because the most dangerous environments are not always the ones with obvious breakdowns. Sometimes the real weakness is an operation that seems to work, but only because experienced people are quietly holding it together. From a CISA perspective, controlled operations means the business can rely on the process itself, not just on the heroics of certain employees. That distinction matters because people change roles, take leave, make mistakes, and eventually move on, while the business still expects the service to continue. Monitoring is a major part of daily operations because organizations need visibility into what their systems are doing before problems become visible to customers, employees, or executives. Monitoring can involve performance, availability, errors, security events, capacity usage, job completion, interface status, and many other signals that help teams detect abnormal conditions. Beginners sometimes hear the word and think only of dashboards or technical alerts, but the deeper purpose is awareness. A monitored environment gives the organization a better chance to identify issues early, understand trends over time, and respond before a disruption spreads. Monitoring also supports accountability because it creates records that show what happened and when. For an auditor, this is important because good operations depend on timely detection, and timely detection depends on useful information being reviewed by the right people. A system that fails silently is much riskier than one that signals trouble clearly, even if both systems are built on similar technology. Visibility is not the same as control, but it is often the first condition needed to make control possible. Incident and problem management are also central because not every failure can be prevented, and the organization must respond in an orderly way when issues occur. An incident is usually an event that disrupts service or threatens normal operation, while problem management looks more deeply at recurring issues and their underlying causes. A beginner can think of incident handling as dealing with the fire in front of you, while problem management is asking why fires keep starting in the same corner. Both matter. If incidents are handled poorly, business disruption lasts longer, users lose confidence, and evidence can be lost. If problem causes are ignored, the same disruptions return again and again, often becoming more expensive over time. In this domain, the auditor is interested in whether incidents are recorded, prioritized, escalated, investigated, and closed in a controlled way, and whether repeated problems lead to real corrective action. Organizations that only restore service without learning from failure may appear busy and responsive, but they are not necessarily becoming safer or more resilient. Capacity and performance management may sound less dramatic than cyber incidents or disaster recovery, but they are vital to stable operations. Systems need enough processing power, storage, memory, bandwidth, and supporting resources to handle expected business demand, and they also need review processes that watch for growth, peak periods, and changing usage patterns. If capacity is ignored, a system may work well during testing or early rollout, but begin slowing down or failing as adoption increases. That kind of decline can damage productivity, customer trust, and even control reliability if scheduled processing starts missing deadlines or monitoring tools lag behind events. Performance management helps the organization understand whether technology is delivering service at a level the business can actually use. Auditors care because poor capacity planning is often a control weakness in disguise. A system that times out, stalls, or processes late may create downstream errors, manual workarounds, and missed obligations even when no malicious activity is involved. Reliable operations requires enough planning to keep normal growth from becoming an avoidable crisis. Another important part of Domain 4 is the management of data protection through backups, restoration processes, and ongoing validation that protected information can actually be recovered when needed. Beginners often assume a backup is enough simply because a copy exists somewhere, but resilience depends on far more than creating a copy and moving on. The organization needs to know what is being backed up, how often it is protected, where it is stored, whether it is secure, and whether it can be restored within acceptable business timeframes. A failed restore during a serious incident can be just as damaging as having no backup at all. That is why testing and validation matters so much in this area. An auditor reviewing operations and resilience will want evidence that backup processes are defined, monitored, and periodically proven to work. The deeper lesson is that data protection is not a checkbox activity. It is part of the organization's promise that important information will remain available and trustworthy even after system failure, human error, or some larger disruptive event. Business continuity, BC, and disaster recovery, DR, are two of the most visible concepts in this domain, and beginners should understand both the relationship and the difference between them. BC focuses on how the organization continues critical business functions during and after a disruption, while DR focuses more specifically on restoring technology and data after a major event. They are closely connected, but they are not identical. A business may keep some essential work going through temporary alternate processes even before full system restoration is complete, which means continuity can begin before recovery is finished. In contrast, DER is heavily concerned with the return of technical capability, such as restored systems, recovered data, and available infrastructure. CISA expects learners to understand that resilience is not just about rebuilding servers after something breaks. It is also about prioritizing business services, understanding dependencies, coordinating people and communication, and making sure the organization can function in some meaningful form while restoration is underway. Within continuity and recovery planning, the ideas of recovery time objective, RTO, and recovery point objective, RPO, help the organization express what the business can actually tolerate. RTO refers to how quickly a service or process needs to be restored after a disruption, while RPO refers to how much data loss, measured in time, the organization can accept. These ideas matter because not every system needs the same speed of recovery or the same level of data protection. Some services can be unavailable for a day with limited harm, while others must return much faster because the business depends on them constantly. A beginner should see these objectives as business decisions supported by technology, not purely technical numbers chosen in isolation. If leaders do not define what matters most, technical teams may overprotect low-value services and underprotect critical ones. Auditors pay attention to this because resilience planning should reflect real business priorities. Recovery expectations need to be realistic, approved, and supported by actual capabilities rather than written as optimistic targets that no one can meet. Testing is just as important in resilience as it is in implementation because plans that are never practiced often fail when people need them most. A continuity document may look thorough on paper, yet still prove weak if contact information is outdated, roles are unclear, dependencies were misunderstood, or recovery steps take longer than expected. Testing helps reveal these weaknesses before an actual emergency does. It also helps people become familiar with their responsibilities, so the first serious disruption is not also the first time they have tried to work through the process. Beginners sometimes imagine testing only as a technical exercise, but resilience testing can also involve communication flows, decision-making, coordination between business and technology teams, and the use of alternate work arrangements. For a CISA learner, the big idea is simple. A plan gains credibility when it is exercised, reviewed, and improved over time. Untested plans may provide comfort, but they do not provide much assurance. Real resilience depends on practiced capability, not just documented intention. Operations also relies heavily on support structures such as service desks, escalation paths, maintenance windows, vendor relationships, and clearly assigned responsibilities. These may sound like ordinary management details, yet they often determine whether disruption remains small or becomes widespread. If users do not know where to report issues, if support staff do not know when to escalate, or if third-party providers are poorly coordinated, then technical problems become slower and harder to resolve. In many environments, external providers support hosting, networking, software platforms, or specialized business applications, which means operational reliability may depend partly on parties outside the organization's direct control. That makes oversight and communication especially important. Service Level Agreement, SLA, commitments, support expectations, incident notification, and accountability all influence whether the business receives the service it believes it is paying for. Auditors examine these structures because control is not limited to internal technology. It also includes whether support responsibilities are defined well enough that the organization can maintain service and respond effectively when trouble appears. From the audit perspective, Domain 4 is not about doing the operations work personally or acting as the recovery manager during a crisis. It is about evaluating whether the systems, processes, roles, records, and controls around operations and resilience are adequate to support the business. An auditor may examine logs, monitoring evidence, incident records, backup reports, continuity plans, recovery tests, vendor oversight, and operational procedures to determine whether management's confidence is justified. The goal is not to demand perfection or eliminate every outage forever. The goal is to assess whether the organization understands its dependencies, protects its critical services, responds to problems in a disciplined way, and learns from disruptions rather than repeating them. For exam preparation, it helps to remember that CISA often asks you to think in terms of risk, evidence, business impact, and control effectiveness. A flashy technology choice matters less than whether the organization can run, support, recover, and govern that technology in a dependable and testable way over time. By the end of this overview, the shape of Domain 4 should feel much clearer. It is the domain that deals with keeping information systems useful, stable, and supportable during everyday activity, while also preparing the organization to withstand and recover from significant disruption. It brings together daily operational discipline, visibility into system health, structured handling of incidents, data protection, continuity planning, recovery capability, and the broader goal of business resilience. When these areas are strong, the business can continue working with confidence even when pressure rises and conditions are less than ideal. When they are weak, even good systems can become unreliable, stressful, and difficult to trust because no one is fully prepared for failure, growth, or change. As you move deeper into this domain, keep one central idea in mind. Technology delivers real value only when it can be operated consistently and restored responsibly. That is the heart of information systems operations and business resilience, and it is why this domain matters so much in the real world as well as on the exam.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.